Hello, and thank you for supporting us for 100 great episodes here at the Navy Blue Corner. To celebrate, here is our interview with David Rhys-Jones. He's a Norm Smith medal winner, a premiership player, and a legend of the Carlton Football Club with incredible insight on the golden years of this great club. We hope you enjoy. We are absolutely honoured to introduce our next guest. He's an absolute legend of the Carlton Football Club, a tough and fiery footballer whose polished skills led him to play 106 games at Carlton from a 182-game career. Not only is a premiership player for the mighty Blue Baggers, but his efforts on the biggest stage were rewarded as he won the Norm Smith Medal for being the best on ground in the 1987 Grand Final. It is, of course, David Rhys-Jones. David, thanks for joining us for our 100th episode. We really appreciate you giving up your time.
No worries. Great to be here.
Beautiful. So, look, I'd love to start with really the beginning of your Carlton journey, because you obviously started at South Melbourne, soon became the Sydney Swans and then at the end of the 84 season, due to some contract issues, Sydney weren't looking to pay you really what you were owed for that next year. You were able to sort of void your contract and look elsewhere. I guess what made you choose Carlton, and were there any other clubs that you were close to moving to during that time?
Oh, look, it was, my accountant, we didn't have managers back in those days. And as you said, I was able to get out. I had another year of a contract to go from the Swans, but it was all the players. They wanted them all to stay on the same rate they were in 1984. And I was getting to a stage where I was, going to have probably enough to, for a deposit for a house in Sydney. And if that had happened, I probably would have stayed up there and, not come back. But, as fate would have it, I was able to get out of that contract and head to Carlton. And Carlton were the only ones I spoke to. I had a few clubs ring me, but Carlton were the only ones I sat down with. And basically I met with Ian Collins in the morning and Keith McKenzie, and had a chat to them and various things there. And a lot of financial stuff, which my accountant and they were talking about. And I met with David Parkin in the afternoon to talk really the football side of things and whether I was going to fit into what he was looking for and everything. And so I signed that afternoon. So I only spoke to him. Flew down on a Saturday morning and flew back that night. Actually, I think I went back the next day, but signed within a day anyway.
Yeah, so was it just basically, once you had obviously had a few clubs reach out to you and chatting to Carlton, was it just because of the stature of that club at the time and the list? Were those the things as well that were, attracting you to coming over to the Blues?
Yeah, look, I think Essendon had just won a flag, and Carlton had sort of been, they'd dropped it obviously 79, 81, 82, and 83, 84 just hadn't sort of cut the mustard there, and good clubs are going to bounce back. And look, at that stage I hadn't played finals, so I could have had a St Kilda or whoever offer me ridiculous money, and I wouldn't have gone there because 5 years of not playing finals footy and then an opportunity to get out. I wasn't I was more keen on playing finals footy than I was on and obviously playing in a premiership, which I was lucky enough to do. So so it was pretty fortunate, and best decision I made.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, what was that transition like? Obviously coming across from Sydney, who weren't in the best of shape, having to relocate, and then joining a club like Carlton that, as you mentioned, sort of just came off of so much success in the late 70s, early 80s. I guess, what was the sort of main differences that you sort of started to notice that maybe made you realize just the difference in why this club was successful over that period?
Well, look, this South Melbourne, where I started, was, and one of the reasons I was sent to Sydney was basically because of a lack of membership and lack of facilities and money around the club. So, going to Carlton was completely different. It was chalk and cheese, really. And, people wouldn't know that, those couple of years we had in Sydney, we didn't have a training base. We didn't have an actual ground we trained on. We weren't allowed to train on the Sydney cricket ground. So we'd train on army ovals from time to time. They did have a secondary oval, which was used as a car park for the cricket and that type of thing. So we did train on there occasionally, but we'd train on local footy grounds and different things. We're working back then. We'd normally have to ring up about 3 o'clock to see where we're training, and so to go from that to Carlton, where everything was put on for you. But then again, and the thing I loved about Carlton was the expectations were very high, and whereas with the Swans, you could get beaten by a team like Carlton by a kick or something. I mean, your supporters would be cheering you off the ground. They'd accept defeat. So Carlton got to Carlton, and 85 was a pretty tough year for me, really, to be honest. About halfway through, I reckon I started to question whether I'd made the right decision or not. And my form was so, and there's a bit of pressure on, I suppose. I was the new recruit. I remember we played a game. I'd actually been dropped, and I think it was Frank Marcazzani did a hamstring or something, didn't come up. So I played against North Melbourne. It was one of the first Friday night games, and I remember going into that game. I would have tackled my own teammates for the ball that particular game. I just got to go out and earn the respect, and it sort of all went pretty well from there. So that sort of kick-started gaining a little bit of respect, and then probably the best thing that happened was Kernahan, Bradley, Motley. They all come next year, and they sort of come in their flash cars and everything. Took a lot of pressure off me. So, I still drove to training in my Honda Civic, and they were in their flash. Potted up bloody Commodores or whatever they bloody were.
No, that's unreal. Like, I can definitely see that. Obviously, coming over, being a bit of the, I guess, like the kind of like high money recruit coming across, and there'd definitely be quite a bit of pressure, and then seeing those lot come across definitely helps take the pressure off. When you sort of came over initially, were there any players that kind of sort of took you under their wing or sort of tried to make you feel a part of the club? Who were the guys that you started to build those bonds with?
Oh, probably the wrong blokes. Guys like Mark McClure and Jimmy Buckley and Wayne Johnson. And they were sort of the characters around the place, and liked a beer and that after a game, and sort of fitted into my wheel pretty well. But then again, I mean, you still got to. It's what you do on the field, which you get your respect from. So and that's earned. It's not given to you. So it was took a little bit of time, but you can be great mates off the field, but you got to earn that respect on the field. And as I said, I got there and there were triple premiership players. I think Bruce Dool had played in 4 premierships at that stage. So there's some champion footballers there, and you weren't going to get things spoon-fed. It didn't matter who you were. So it was, interesting that first year, but battled through it, and sort of got on my way after that.
Definitely came out the other side really well. And look, the obviously that 1986 season ended in defeat to Hawthorn in the grand final. I guess I'd love to know what kind of maybe changed, if anything, then going into that following year, meeting the same opposition in the grand final, but then actually being able to defeat them in 87. Was it a difficult one, obviously having that defeat on the biggest stage and being able to bounce back for it? What sort of, changed leading into that next season to lead us to the premiership?
Yeah, we had a reasonably young team. I mean, a lot of the, in 86, we won the reserves, best and fair, the reserves final that year, and we had blokes like Jimmy Buckley, Kenny Sheldon. There's some great players. I think Wayne Harms might have played in that. I mean, some really top Carlton names played in that. So there's a lot of quality around, and but what I think after 86, getting there and not making it, and Kernahan was in his first season, Bradley, Motley, these guys. So. And, I think that drove us right through our preseason. I think we had that in the back of our mind all preseason and worked pretty hard. We had a pretty solid preseason. Wolsey was pretty hard taskmaster. So, it was difficult things happen. I mean, early in the season, Des English contracted cancer. Obviously, Peter Motley had his a severe accident, which, geez, it would have killed anyone else, I think. But he survived that, luckily. But and Bernie Evans is a good mate of mine who got rubbed out for 1 week in the preliminary final. He missed the grand final. So there were a few blokes who couldn't be out there with us, and I think on that particular day, we had them, in the back of our mind as well. I don't think anyone would have beat us that day. It was, we're pretty well committed, and we were willing to do what we had to do to win.
It's good to hear, and I guess it's one of those, probably the most memorable moment for you, that grand final. Obviously, you end up walking away with 2 medals, winning that Norm Smith medal, being able to completely shut down Dermot Brereton there. And I guess whose decision was that to shift you from the wing into a more defensive role? And how did you feel when you were told that you're going to play down on Dermy?
Yeah, look, it was Robert Walls. He apparently I think there were 6 of them on the match committee, and the other 5 didn't want me playing there. But Wolsey stuck by his guns, and they basically, at the end of the day, they let him have his way. And I didn't find out about it till Thursday night. And I walked in the room as and the team was up on the board, and there I was at centre back. So there were a lot of eyes on me at the time, and so look, I just accepted that was my lot in my part of what I've got to do for the team, and that's the great thing about the grand finals and the premierships is it's a team sport. I mean the Norm Smith's nice to have, and I suppose it's it helps me so I could play a bit of footy as well as being that knucklehead who got reported 25 times. So it's good to have that as a bit of reassurance to people that I could actually play the game as well. But so it was it was Wolsey who was he made the move, and it come off.
Yeah, I guess, was there much sort of discussion then? You say you sort of walked in on the Thursday before the game, which obviously doesn't give you a lot of prep time really to figure out the strategy behind it. Was much given to you around the plan of, I guess, the reasoning why you were going to be down there and what they kind of wanted you to do? Or was it a lot sort of just left to you to figure out at that kind of stage?
Yeah, a lot of it, back in those days is, it was man-on-man football. So, I did have a word to John Dorotich, who played on him a bit, and Dora was talking about, sort of bodying him and doing a few things, and I thought, geez, I'm not going to be doing that. So Dermot will be, he'll kill me if that happens. So look, I played off him a bit, and my tactic was really to bring the ball to ground where I thought I could beat him on the ground where he had the advantage while the ball was in the air. So the more it was on the ground, the luckier I got, I suppose. But look, Dermot's one of those players who can turn a game in 5 minutes too, in just a 5-minute burst and kick 2 or 3 goals and get his team back in there. So, it was a concentration thing throughout the game. But and we had a pretty young backline then too, with Mick Kennedy, Stephen Silvani, trying to think, Tommy Alvin was back there, Ian Aitken and myself. So in Ian Aitken's first year too. So it was, it was a pretty inexperienced, I suppose, backline. So I was like the oldest statesman, I suppose, back there then, and had to take a little bit of responsibility. But look, I enjoyed it. I'd played on the backline a little bit during the course of that year and enjoyed it, But so I don't know when Wolsey sort of had it in the back of his mind or had any, but he made the call and it worked out.
Yeah, I guess you end up sort of getting moved around quite a bit, playing a bit forward in the midfield, down back. Did you have a position that you sort of liked the most, or did you not mind getting thrown around a bit?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed. I reckon, at one stage or another, I played in every position on the ground except ruck and rover. But and I did. I enjoyed. I think I kicked about 112 goals, over those games. So I had a couple of bags of 6 and 5s and that. So I was thrown forward at times. I didn't like being left down there though. I mean, I think there was one year, I think I was at the Swans. Yeah, it might have been 84, 83 or 84 at the Swans, and I'd kicked 21 goals after 3 rounds, and sort of thought then, I thought, rightio, it's worked for 3 matches, get me out of here now. I'm not going to be the, I was up contending with the leading goal kickers at that stage, and it was funny that I wanted to get out of there because I thought, I'm not a natural forward. I wasn't big enough and strong enough, and while I could pinch hit at times and get down there and get lucky, I suppose, and I was able to do that on a few occasions. But I enjoyed a challenge too. I probably played some of my best footy on the better players, if you know what I mean. Playing on a guy in his 5th or 6th game, I probably let myself down and went out and tried to do a bit too much. But when I probably knuckled down a bit more when I was playing on the better type players. And look, when I started playing, the wingmen around then, you had Dougie Hawkins, you had Keith Gregg, Wayne Schimmelbusch, every team you come up against Collingwood, Ricky Barham, Brian Wood. There was just some terrific wingmen around in those days, and you played set positions, so you played on, some real champions of the time, and it was great. It was a good competition each week.
Yeah, you might have just answered my next question there, because I was going to ask sort of who are probably some of the toughest guys you came up against that, it was always just going to be a really hard day. And then probably on the flip side to that as well, was there anyone that when you did see their name on the team sheet lining up against you that you're sort of rubbing your hands, you couldn't wait to play them? They're almost your bunny. I'd love to get to know your thoughts on that throughout your career.
Yeah, well, the one who I did rub my hands together was the 86 grand final when I lined up on the wing and Gary Ayres is lined up on me, and Gary normally played in the back pocket, and I'm thinking, God, because I'd played on him before and kicked goals on him, and so I knew he went for his marks, and I thought, geez, I reckon I'm a chance to have a good day there, but he won the Norm Smith medal that day, so my name was Smithy at Mad Monday Drinks that particular year. So they didn't let me forget that. But look, there was some, you come up against great players, and as I said, I probably took it a bit too easy against the lesser lights and not against I didn't sort of bring myself to but you learn as you go along, and I got to the back line in the end, and that was sort of like a good position. I couldn't play on the monster sort of full forward, centre forward types. I used to be able to read the play, and we're good players. Peter Dean was is terrific to play with, and Sauce back there. They'd cover for you when you're in a bit of trouble and come over and spoil and that. So it was interesting, but I was really enjoying playing backline and end up getting a knee injury, and then that sort of put me back a fair bit, and I missed quite a few towards the end, and I was probably at the peak of my powers then, and just got a bad injury and had a operation that didn't work too well, and then got a staph infection, and it was not good at that time, but. And as I said, I was probably, I was 26, 27 at that stage and playing probably the best footy of my career. And, that was disappointing, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and when you touch, I just want to go back as well, because look, if they were calling you Smithy after the 86, they better have been calling you that after the 87. Probably like the best way to do it. If someone was going to win the Norm Smith on you one year, go out there and do it and win it the next year. Did that, I guess, play into your mind at all? Maybe going into that game when you, I guess, just saying you had that mindset in 86, saying, okay, beating this guy before, going to have a good day, turned out to be pretty bad. I guess you felt like that on your end. Did that play into anything leading into the next season?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I prided myself on playing well in big games. I mean, that's when, the second semi-final, I was best on ground that day. And you pride yourself on playing well in big games, and that was just it was a strange game, and I actually had a chance a little while back to have a look at it, and the ball just didn't seem to bounce our way. It just one of those games where nothing really worked for us, and we're never in the game, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
Hawthorn got out to a good start, and just one of those games we, as a team never got into, and unfortunately, I didn't get, I think I kicked a goal, but it was about, all I'd done sort of thing. It was, so it was tough, and as he had a reasonable game on the wing and probably deserved the Norm Smith. So they were too good for us that particular year, but we bounce back next year.
Yeah, and look, one thing probably gets spoken about, probably about the current Carlton group at the moment, is mentality, particularly after how we finished the end of last season and being able to have that ability to step up in those key moments. I guess for you, having been a part of Premiership team and such an accomplished group as well, what do you think sort of makes or helps build that successful mentality and winning culture? Because a lot of our listeners are probably sort of my age that haven't been able to see a lot of success during our lifetime live. We've pretty much grown up watching the videos, being able to wear the 87 grand final tape out completely growing up. And I just love to know, getting that insight from someone that's been there and done that when we're at the peak of our powers, just to what is the mentality like in that winning culture, and what sort of breeds that?
Yeah, well, as I said, when I got to Carlton, it was just, they were expected to win it, and the expectation was high. I mean, John Elliott, he wouldn't have a good look on his face if after a game we've been beaten, sort of thing. So it was the expectations were very high, and I think we're getting to a stage now with our group at the moment where they're putting some high expectations on themselves, and you've got to have the ability to be able to do it to start with. We're a bloody good squad back then. As I said, I think we won 86 and 87 reserves grand finals as well. So, it showed the quality and the depth we had there. And so it was, it was different. But I think the guys now, I think they're getting to a stage, and I've been lucky enough. I'm involved with the past players, and I've been to a couple of functions where the guys have spoken about, disappointment of last year and expectations for this year, and they're not setting any limits on themselves, which is fantastic to hear. And I think when you start thinking about it, and you start thinking, well, Charlie Curnow should be a better footballer next year. He's going to improve a bit. Harry Mackay's going to improve a bit. Jacob Wiedering is going to be a better footballer next year. I mean, they haven't reached the peak of their powers yet. We've got Cripper probably at the peak of his powers, and in age and experience and everything else, and he's probably got another 3 or 4 years sitting up there. But these other young guys, I mean, and Charlie's missed a lot of footy too. It can get scary when you think these guys could be part of something very, very special. And I like the fact that we went out at the end of last year and we're recruiting a wingman. I mean, we're going for Blake Acres, and we're going, well, hang on a minute, we're recruiting wingmen. That shows we've got enough confidence in the depth we've got through that midfield. We're starting to put all the little pieces together now, and the expectations high. I think the competition to get a game next year is going to be fantastic too for a lot of players, and hopefully I put that pressure on all year, and he'll probably miss Sam Walsh for a month or so, but we should have enough in that midfield to be able to get by anyway. So we're running out of excuses as Carlton people. So this year I actually backed them when the odds first come out. I think they come out at $11 or something, and I had $100 on them to win the flag next year. So I got on early, and hopefully I'm right.
Oh, fingers crossed. Oh, I'd absolutely love that. I think every Carlton supporter would. And I think, you probably nailed it as well. It was something you said earlier in this interview where you mentioned like just not having that expectation, actually having that expectation of winning. And where you mentioned, getting at Sydney, you were getting clapped off when you got close. And I feel like that's for a lot of the times when I was sort of growing up in those sort of mid 2010 years when we were finishing bottom, you get close, and like that would be a good result for us. And that's probably not helped lead this expectation. There's definitely needs to be a lot more pressure on these guys to perform. And I think you've nailed it, saying that there's so much individual talent here. At some stage, you got to put it together, and fingers crossed it will be this year. But look, I mean, thank you for your time. That's pretty much going to wrap this one up. Look, I think these stories are just so important to really preserve like the history of this football club, and I hope the listeners have enjoyed it as much as I definitely have. So yeah, David, I think thanks again for joining us for our 100th episode.
No worries, and let's hope the Blues can get there this year. Go the Blues.